All right, friends, it's time to give you loyal listeners a discount on protein powder. You may or may not know, but I launched my very first protein powder 2 years ago. It's a grass-fed beef isolate with only 3 ingredients: grass-fed beef, either organic cacao or organic vanilla, and organic monk fruit. Now, if you don't want any of the added flavor and sweeteners, you can also just get unflavored. And no matter what flavor you choose, you're getting over 23 grams of protein per scoop, which is going to keep you full and satisfied between meals. I love starting my day with a Fab4 smoothie and breaking my fast with that much protein. It makes a serious difference in my cravings and blood sugar balance the rest of the day, and I've seen it with my clients as well. Now, I never thought I'd own a product company, but when I got pregnant with Sebastian, I realized the majority of protein powders were chemically extracted or enzymatically extracted, and I wanted to use heat and water only. I wanted minimal ingredients because we don't need those emulsifiers, fillers, or added vitamins, minerals, and probiotics. All of those additions increase the chances that it's not going to work for your body, whether it be bloating, digestion issues. I just wanted pure, clean protein to keep you full and satisfied so you could build the most delicious Fab4 smoothie. And I have to say, I'm pretty proud of the flavor. If you take a look at our reviews on Amazon, you'll see 5-star reviews for flavor. And that is key, because if you don't love your Fab4 smoothie and you don't love drinking your protein powder, you're not going to do it. It won't become a habit, and it's consistency that outpaces everything. So if you're here and you're listening and you want to give our protein powder a try, use the code podcast5 for $5 off your order. And let me know if you love it. My favorite ways to apply this protein powder is in my Fab4 smoothie, making freezer fudge, making chocolate milk, making hot chocolate, and throwing the unflavored into all my kids' baked goods. So let me know how you use it. Let me know if you love it, and share this podcast deal with your friends. Today's guest is Dr. Carrie Jones. She's a naturopathic physician who is board certified in naturopathic endocrinology with a master's in public health and has been working for over 15 years in the field of functional and integrative medicine. As a former adjunct faculty for the National University of Natural Medicine, Dr. Jones has taught both courses in gynecology and in advanced endocrinology. She lives in Portland, Oregon, and is the medical director for Precision Analytical Inc. They're the creators of the most cutting-edge hormone test on the market, the Dutch test. That's a test that I've used with a number of functional medicine docs that I work with, and it's one of the most profound tests that can help you understand your hormonal struggles. So definitely something to look into after you listen into this episode. But let's get back to Dr. Jones. She lectures all over the world on topics of hormone, and her mission is to educate and empower women to understand their hormones and help those with hormonal struggles. So this is an amazing episode if you are interested in understanding ovulation, estrogen detoxification, the cortisol awakening response, perimenopause and menopause, and hacking your clock genes. So tune in. This is a good one. All right, Carrie. Well, welcome to the show. As I said before we started, I haven't been this excited in a while to interview someone. I feel like your knowledge on hormones and just the fact that you created the Dutch test, and that is such an accessible tool for people out there. This is going to be such a jam-packed episode. So thank you for your time and for joining me.
Oh my gosh, I was so honored when you reached out to talk on your podcast. So I'm just excited to be here.
Cool. Well, let's get started. Why don't you share your background and how you began specializing in the field of women's hormones?
I have known since I was a little girl that I wanted to be a doctor, and I thought I wanted to be OBGYN or pediatrician. And then when I got into college and was pre-med, I was working at 2 different hospitals. One, I worked in the pediatric wing, and the other one, I worked in their community outreach. And I was loving the community outreach, the education, the people, the community feel. And the pediatric wing, on the other hand, was very cold. It was very sterile. It was very needed for emergencies. But at the same time, it was like, do this surgery, take this drug, get this scan, and discharge. And I was like, is this medicine? I don't really want to do this. So I stopped the whole conventional medicine route and moved to Oregon, Portland, Oregon on a whim. And I found naturopathic medicine. And from there, it opened my eyes to functional, preventative, holistic type modalities in addition to traditional conventional medicine. And I've just never stopped. And I decided that I was going to focus in more women's health and hormones because so many women struggle with hormone issues. And we were just never taught about it. Just so many of my friends didn't know very much about their menstrual cycle. And my mom was going through menopause and she was like, I don't know what this is. And I don't know why I feel like crap. And what are all these hot flashes? And I thought, man, we get taught like the basics of having a baby and that's it. Like we learn about our period kind of, and then it's like, good luck.
Yeah. See you later.
Mm-hmm.
I know. And that happens in junior high when you like really can't even grasp it. I feel like it needs to be continued education all the way through school.
All the way.
You're not even interested. I mean, I remember going, really diving deep into the research for fertility and like loving all that stuff, when I was thinking about getting pregnant. But prior to that, it's like, I have all these other things I want to learn about and understand and know.
Yeah.
So I'm sure everyone wants to understand their own body and their own hormones. So let's jump right in. What are some of the signs of hormonal imbalance or those like initial flags that might, be a red flag for you that a client or a patient has an issue?
So the short answer is yes. So many things are tied to the hormones. So hormones are chemical messengers. They're made from the brain, and then they're made from glands. So our ovaries and our adrenal gland and our thyroid, and for men, our testicles. And if they're like, not like Goldilocks. So if they're too high or if they're too low, then we get symptoms. So the common symptoms you hear all the time, if you're supposed to be cycling, it's like PMS, mood swings, heavy periods, short periods, long periods, cramps, breast tenderness, fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS. Like those are all very hormonally related, fertility. And so on the sort of non-ovarian side, women say, I'm tired. My hair is falling out. What's up with my skin? Why am I so bloated? Why do I have headaches? Why do I have headaches at my period? And while hormones may not be the only thing causing it, of course, they are 100% involved. They can't help themselves. And so as women start to say this to me, and especially as they get older and they're like, I have hot flashes, I have night sweats, I have vaginal dryness, I can't sleep, I'm anxious, I'm depressed. And it's like, depending which sort of age group you're in, or season of life, that the hormone symptoms can change. But as I say, you can be, quote, hormonal at any age. I get really discouraged and upset when I have young women in their 20s that have hot flashes. And they're like, my doctor told me, like, that's not possible. I'm too young for hot flashes. I'm like, oh, no, you're not. It doesn't mean you're menopausal, but it could mean you have hormonal stuff going on. Let's address it.
So let's get right in. How do we address it? What is the best way? What is the best way to really understand hormones? Because you're talking about the Goldilocks thing of hormones where, you really want it in that optimal range. But hormones change over time throughout, if you're menstruating over your whole month cycle, if throughout the day they change, like how do we really gather the information we need to start making changes in our life?
So the timing of testing is important. If you're looking to check, for example, progesterone only comes out to play after you ovulate or release the egg. So it drives me crazy when women go, oh, I got my blood drawn and I'm told I'm normal. I'm like, well, what day of your cycle were you on? I'm like, well, I was on day 2 of my period. I'm like, no, like it's important that we understand just what you said. Women's cycle. So we have to match the test to the time of where you are in your cycle. So for the average woman who's listening, if you have a typical 28-day cycle, then usually your practitioner will run like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone on days 19, 20, or 21 of your cycle. So it's like after ovulation, but before your period. And so that's like a really good snapshot if you're looking to look there. Thyroid hormone, believe it or not, I was taught thyroid hormone was not cycle dependent. It didn't matter until very recently, a thyroid doctor that I just really admire, Dr. Alan Christensen, he was like, Carrie, everything's attached to the cycle. Of course, the thyroid reacts to the cycle. So women who check their thyroid closer to ovulation, now ovulation's a big event. It's like fireworks, right? Like everything goes up to push the egg out. And so he says TSH or thyroid stimulating hormone could go up as well. So if women are randomly checking their thyroid at different parts of their cycle, they may notice a lot of variation. They may be adjusting medication up or down just because they're inconsistent where they check in their thyroid or in their cycle. And I thought, Well, now I feel stupid, right? Like, because hormones are my thing. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Of course. So now for women, I'm like, you have to be consistent. Either check leading up to your period or during your period, or consistently check at ovulation, assuming you ovulate, because then you really are comparing apples to apples of where you are in the time of your cycle. And so just knowing these little helpful hints, I've had a lot of women reach out to me and go, first, I had no idea. And second, I got retested and you were right. Like, I completely tested in the wrong part of my cycle. Now it makes more sense. Now I have accurate data. Now I know where I am and what's going on and how to adjust supplements or medication or what have you. So first step is testing, but know where you are in your cycle when you test.
Absolutely. It's a total moving target. So
yeah.
Cliff notes of what you just said, if you're testing your sex hormones, you want to be on day 19, 20, or 21. If you're testing thyroid hormone, you need to do it consistently at the same time every single month to medicate appropriately if needed.
Right.
And get a good picture of what's going on. So
exactly. And like menopausal women, they don't have, it doesn't matter for them because they're not cycling. So I get this question, right? I'm 55. I have no cycle. Totally cool. You are allowed to test anytime you want.
I love it.
Yeah.
So how are we testing and what are we looking for?
Thyroid is done in the blood. Blood testing, serum testing is gold standard. So I still always say that. And when it comes to sex hormones, I am fully biased because I am the medical director for the Dutch test, which is a dried urine test you can do at home. And so I do recommend the Dutch test, but I do have people that go, can I just get a screenshot? Like, can I just go to get my blood drawn and just get a snapshot of what's going on? Sure, absolutely. And I understand not everybody's budget will cover the Dutch test, but maybe getting a blood draw is more likely to be covered by insurance. And then it fits in their budget, it gives them something to go on. But the Dutch is really comprehensive, which is why I like it. We check multiple layers of hormones. We check hormone pathways. We tell you not only what your estrogen is at the moment, but where it's going. Not all pathways are helpful for women. Same for testosterone. There's a pathway that causes acne and hair growth in places we don't want it, but hair loss on our head. And so we check those pathways to see where you're going. And we look at cortisol. So a lot of women right now, they're stressed out, they're not sleeping, they're really tired. And so we can evaluate what's happening with your stress system, your HPA adrenal system.
I love it. So can you explain if I was going to get a Dutch test, a dry urine test at home, how am I taking the test at home? And then what do the results provide you as the practitioner to make recommendations to a patient?
So thankfully, it's a really easy at-home test. People laugh when I say it's dried urine. It's these pieces of filter paper that you really just pee on 4, if not 5 times in a day. So I tell women, like, if you've ever taken a pregnancy test or maybe an ovulation predictor kit or had to pee in a cup for a lab, it's kind of similar. You just pee on it. You just pee on the strip, let it dry in the morning. You do it a couple hours later. You do it around dinner. You do it before bed. And if you have insomnia, you do it when you wake up at 3 a.m, as an example. Let it completely dry, mail it back to the lab. And then what I get as a practitioner is I get all the hormones that we're accustomed to. So the 3 kinds of estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone, your DHEA, your cortisol, melatonin, things like that. And then I get the next layer down. I get those pathways that I was mentioning. So now I'm like, gosh, not only do you make a lot of estrogen that explains your PMS, it explains your fibroids, it explains your endometriosis pain or contributes to, maybe not fully explains. But then where does it go? Because these pathways, like I said, some of them work for you and some of them work against you. And so then I can go, you know what? You're on a pathway that could lead to destruction. You're on a pathway that leads to growth. You're on a pathway that leads to chin hair. Like, let's do diet and lifestyle changes and supplements to get you off that pathway or to slow that pathway down, which is really helpful when you can be actionable about your hormones and, feel better.
Absolutely. So what are some of the most common diagnoses or problems you're seeing on these tests across the board for women?
The big ones are when we're looking between estrogen and progesterone. And so we hear the word estrogen dominance a lot. And what that means is that when we are after ovulation, but before our period, so that second half of our cycle, progesterone should rule. She should absolutely be the queen there. But if you don't ovulate or if you don't make a lot of progesterone, then estrogen will win and estrogen will be higher. And that's what we mean by estrogen dominance. It's this relative to progesterone. So that's what can lead to things like our PMS symptoms and our heavy periods and fibroid growth and cramps and clots and things like that. And so we see that a lot with women. Either they're not ovulating, they struggle to ovulate, or they just have a lot of estrogen. Maybe they can't clear it out of their body. They're struggling with detoxification of estrogen for a variety of reasons. So that's a big thing we see. Now, on the testosterone side, we often see low testosterone. So women are like, I'm tired. I have low libido, right? I'm not as motivated. I'm struggling with muscle mass. I can't put it on. I can't build lean muscle mass. So we'll see a lot of those type of hormones kind of be on the low side. And on the flip side, we'll see it elevated as well. So now they're angry, they're irritated, they're, again, acne, they're having hair loss, like male pattern hair loss, but in females. PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. So we see that quite a bit. And we can also see as a woman's in menopause, she's either getting into or has been in and she's really struggling, I can see the levels of her hormones. And when they're down near zero, I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. This is why you feel as bad as you do, because your hormones have dropped so low going into menopause. And while your hormones are supposed to drop low as you get into menopause, there's low, and then there's like low, low, and right. And then some of these women are like low, 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 and they feel it.
Yeah. They're like, someone just threw me off a cliff.
Pretty much. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like I was reviewing a case with a doctor maybe yesterday, and she said, how low would you describe these? I said, these are about the lowest I've ever seen. And I've been doing this for years. So they were real low for this poor woman.
Wow. What a bummer. So let's kind of break these down, because I think, I obviously work with clients as well that have estrogen dominance, that have elevated androgens or testosterone that cause or contribute to PCOS and acne and all of the things that you were talking about. Can we start with estrogen and progesterone?
Yeah.
Like, what's a protocol for increasing progesterone and decreasing estrogen to rebalance that in the body?
Right. So we'll start with estrogen. So estrogen, assuming somebody's not on estrogen, of course, which is common, but assuming they're not on anything, it's kind of a two-pronged approach. We want to help the body clear estrogen out naturally through estrogen detoxification. Estrogen detoxification happens 24/7, 365. It doesn't stop for Christmas. It doesn't stop for New Year's. It doesn't stop for your birthday. Like, thank goodness it happens all the time. But it can get sluggish. It can be slowed down. We can unfortunately come in contact with other chemicals. We can have genetic variants that make us slow. We can be missing certain nutrients that make us slow. Alcohol makes it slow, right? There's a lot that goes into that. And gut health is a big part of it. Our intestinal tract, whether we're pooping or not, does affect how we clear estrogen out of the body. It's the last phase of getting rid of estrogen. So the first thing I tell women is like, all right, we're going to eat for detoxification. I'm going to make sure that you're pooping every day. We're going to make sure that, we're going to evaluate your alcohol intake. Sorry to say, we're going to make sure you're hydrated, and we're going to make sure that you're chewing and digesting and absorbing your nutrients, because it's your nutrients like magnesium and zinc and your B vitamins and choline that help with certain phases of your detoxification. Certain foods, think of like your broccoli, your kale, your cauliflower foods. Those brassica family foods help the first phase of estrogen detox maybe go down the more preferred pathway, we'll say. But then other foods like beets and onions and garlic and artichoke, which are, all coming into season in the summer, those can be really helpful for just improving all the pathways and all the enzymes that are involved. And so that's a big one. Now, the second thing I do when it comes to estrogen is chemicals. Chemicals. So when we're looking at, they're called endocrine disrupting chemicals. And all the hormones we're discussing, thyroid, ovary, testicular, pancreas, that's all part of the endocrine system. So an endocrine disrupting chemical is going to disrupt the endocrine system. And we already do it enough on our own. Like, we don't need to disrupt it anymore. So our plastics, our phthalates, our parabens, what they do is they look like estrogen enough that when they bind to the estrogen receptor that thought it was supposed to be off for the day, it turns it back on. And now you get the downstream estrogen effect. So you can feel estrogenic, you can have crappy symptoms, not because of your own estrogen, but because of plastics, parabens, phthalates, fertilizers, what have you. And they're hard to test for because they don't look like estrogen. So they don't come up on an estrogen test. The estrogen tests are just looking for straight up estrogen, estradiol. And so I'm telling women all the time, I need you to read labels. I need you to evaluate what you're putting on your skin and your makeup, your hair, what you clean your house with, what candles you burn, the scented tree in your car, all of these things are what you put in your garden. All these things make a big difference. Do you drink out of plastic constantly? Do you drink your hot coffee when you go get coffee to go with a lid on top, right? Because now you're pulling hot liquid through a plastic lid and you're just pulling all that plastic with it. So do you use glass? Do you store food in glass? Do you reheat in glass? Some of these things. And it's amazing and eye-opening for women when they actually evaluate their life and they're like, oh man, I have a lot of plastic exposure. I have a lot of chemical exposure and I didn't even realize it, which totally can be overwhelming. I tell people, don't feel like you need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars and break the budget. Just as you run out of things, then just replace it with something that's, cleaner and greener and is puts on there with that like paraben free and phthalate free and, all these things free and go from there. When you get to the point when you're ready for and can afford and budget for a water filter, get a water filter, there's easy steps. Like when you're out of deodorant, you're going to buy it anyway. So just switch. When you're out of laundry detergent, you're going to buy it anyway. So just switch. And so we start small and then we move up from there.
I love those tips so much. I think exactly the same way as you. It can be really overwhelming to realize that all of this is out there and then to say, well, so it's like starting with the biggest offenders. Like one of the things that I committed to this year was like not to buy plastic water bottles. Like it just has become something that's so easy to have a big stainless steel Yeti. And I have a stainless steel Yeti for coffee because not only are you talking about the cap, you're talking about the liner inside of the Starbucks cup that people don't even realize is like, oh, it's BPA free, but the BPA free a lot of the BPA free,
the S is worse.
Yeah. BPA free chemicals are exactly the same. That's so hard. But starting small and kind of attacking one space at a time. Like, okay, cleaning ingredients. Okay, beauty supply. Yeah. I love the beauty supply part. Like I know I have clients who love their Chanel foundation or their Laura Mercier or something. And like, I think being realistic about stuff is important too. So it's like, okay, cool. Well, let's start with like the body lotion and the body wash and the things that are covering the majority of your body. And I'll let you get away with your concealer for the next 3 months until it's out. And then we can try the beauty counter options or the detox market style stuff. But really, really important to consider. So how would someone test for endocrine disrupting chemicals? And is that...
So there are some companies out there that are doing them. This was a urine test predominantly. The problem with endocrine disrupting chemicals is that they get stored in the body, right? So the body's like, ooh, I either have to clear these out, or if they're fat soluble, I push them in the fat tissue for storage because I don't know what to do with these. So if you have a lot stored in the fat tissue, it's not going to come out unless you do a fat biopsy, and nobody does that. So that's where it's tricky. So they can check. There are some companies that will do, not Dutch, but other companies, you pee in a cup and then they can evaluate for some of these markers to give you an idea. Now that what's controversial then though, is if like, let's say you run it and your parabens are really high. So does that mean you have a lot of paraben in your body or that you are really good at getting rid of it? So that you have a very efficient system. That's where everyone's like, I don't know. We can't exactly pin that down. I don't think. Yeah. So it's a nice test to have to give you, but to give like an overlook, but don't completely hang your hat on it and still work to improve detoxification. We call them emunctories, which are all your detox pathways. So think like your lungs and your skin and your lymph nodes, where you sweat out of, and your liver and your kidneys. All of these pathways, are they open and are they able to clear out in various ways? Just start with that as the foundation regardless.
I love it. So just a refresher, if someone has elevated estrogen and they are looking to help their body detoxify, we're talking about increasing brassica or cruciferous vegetables. We're focusing on B vitamins, choline. We're magnesium. We're making sure that we're pooping every day to really remove excess estrogen via our bowels. What are we doing in these other detox pathways to support our body? You talked about sweating.
So sweating is big, lymphatic. If you can, it's really cheap. Buy a body brush, like one of those hard bristle body brushes, or you'll see them in like a spa brush.
Love those.
And like you can do what's called lymphatic brushing or dry skin brushing. Super easy, takes a couple minutes. There's lots of YouTube videos on it. And basically what you're doing is you're encouraging your lymph to move. Your lymphatics are different than your veins and your arteries, and that they're very thin and fragile, and they don't work on a pump system, which neither do your veins. So in order to get your lymphatics to move, you actually have to move them. You have to contract, you have to exercise, you have to move, or you have to brush them in a sense, which is why we like the dry skin brushing. Trampolines, mini trampolines, people who got into that phase like in the 80s, like mini trampolines are in. I have had a mini trampoline probably for 15 years. I do mini trampoline almost every day. My husband's like, I have never met a person in my whole life that like goes all in on the mini trampoline. I do. People are like, well, how long do you do it for? I do it for 2 songs.
There you go.
I jump on for 2 songs, and that the rebound motion on mini trampolines, again, it's pushing, a lot of things in your body, but it's helping to move lymph as well. And then making sure that you're not clogging your lymph. There's a lot of controversy around, of course, antiperspirants, because the antiperspirant part, the aluminum and everything, gets clogged in the lymph, and then you struggle to sweat. And so, but I'm like, well, why risk it, right? Why risk it? If we know how important the lymphatic system is, we know how at risk women could be for breast cancer, things like that, then maybe just switch over to deodorant, no antiperspirant, and let your lymph run free.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of that. I actually am using Hume unscented, and it has like inulin for your skin microbiome, and it's just no aluminum, and really, really amazing. So
that's fantastic.
If people are looking for one that works, because I know, oh my gosh, depending on what's in it, you can have any type of baking soda. People get a lot of like razor burn, and there's you can smell like a hippie at Coachella or something if you don't find one that works for you. But that has been an absolute game changer for me, so much that I invested in that company and joined them, because I'm like, this works so dang good. I'm gonna have to do that.
That's amazing. I didn't even know that. So
I'll get you some.
That's fantastic. I haven't tried that one. I've gone through, as many people will attest to, if you've switched to the natural deodorant route. I mean, I've probably tried 20, right? Like in this, and then more and more come out, which is wonderful. More companies are I was going to say jumping on the bandwagon, but also believing in the reason for coming out. The population demand is there for natural deodorants, and I've sure tried a lot. I can honestly not remember the name. I found it randomly at Whole Foods a couple of months ago, and it was a rose smelling one. And I was like, oh, this one's fun. It was on sale. So naturally, I got sucked into the packaging, and man, it works great. I wish I'd have to go get it, but
that's all right.
It's a rose smelling one out of Whole Foods. And I'm pretty impressed. So
start there, right? You're like, go to your natural food stores and see what you can find.
Yeah.
And look for aluminum free.
And sauna. I do want to mention sauna. Can't talk about sweating without sauna. If it fits in your budget, you can buy, there's like the clear light sauna, and there's the sauna, the silver thing at home that people sit in and their head sticks out of. Some gyms have saunas. Some people have wellness centers they attend that have saunas, and, doing sauna can be a game changer for really mobilizing chemicals and getting it out into the lymphatics and out into the sweat.
Love it. That was my push present for baby number 1. An infrared, a clear light sauna. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I have sunlit, and I don't have clear light, but same.
Yes.
I love this because detoxification is so important. And you talked about deodorant. Do you have like 5, other than clean water and deodorant, do you have a couple more recommendations for people that are just, you think, give people the biggest bang for their buck when it comes to decreasing phytoestrogens or estrogenic endocrine disrupting chemicals?
Let's see here. I'm trying to think of other biggest bang for the buck that they would recommend. Honestly, like you, I think Plastic, minimizing plastic as best you can is awesome. So don't, like, I grew up in the South, so that plastic cling wrap that you put it over everything and throw in the microwave, huge. In fact, my mom still uses it to this day. So just things like that. When you get to go food, and if it comes in styrofoam, even styrofoam itself, that's styrofoam doesn't break down. It's a pretty potent chemical. And then if you have hot food in it or you reheat it in that styrofoam, maybe transfer it to glass. Using glass, drinking out of glass, mugs, stainless steel. I think the less we can get exposed to as women and men too, the better we are. So avoiding plastic as best you can. Trying to think of like most bang for your buck that I would recommend. I think scented stuff is really, really important. We are in our homes now all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so making sure that if you can, opening your windows and getting fresh air, believe it or not, fresh air into your house. You would think some people are like, oh, but the outside air is pollutant. They've actually shown that it's the inside your house is actually potentially more toxic than the outside air. So opening doors, getting some air circulation into your house can help. Candles are all the rage. Candles often are really quite for the fragrance. Ugh. Not good. There are candle companies that are clean burning and have like wood wicks and those, be careful of, you just research and read about it. The scented plugins, a lot of people are into, so be very, very, the scented plugins for your car. That would be a big one. So eliminating those or, switching to other things. There's a lot of controversy around essential oils. I get that because it's still a fragrance and source matters. So if you buy just some random dollar store essential oil, it's probably not that great for you. So be careful where you buy your essential oils and make sure you read up on it if you're going to switch from candles to going that route.
I love that.
I think that's a big one. And then if you can, again, most bang for your buck, it's like air filters. If that fits in the budget, looking at air filters, because again, we're in our home all the time. Now we're not in and out as much as we used to be a year or two ago. And so considering in your little home office or even in your family room or where you sleep 8 hours a night in your bedroom, like get an air filter and run it and try to improve the air quality that's around you.
I love it. Really, really awesome tips. And you're bringing me to the next topic just perfectly. Talk about sleep. Because you can gather a lot of information from the Dutch test in regards to our circadian rhythm, our cortisol curve, our melatonin curve. Can you kind of walk me through what a healthy individual might look like or someone who has circadian mismatch?
Yeah, absolutely. Cortisol gets a bad rap, but actually we need it. We wouldn't survive as humans without it. It's important for our stress response and our blood sugar and inflammation and alertness and all this stuff. And so in the morning, assuming that you are on a day shift, you're not a night shift worker, you're a day shift person. In the morning, when you open your eyes and light comes in, your cortisol goes up pretty exponentially in about the first 30 minutes. It's called the cortisol awakening response. It's to get your butt out of bed. It's to get you a little bit of blood sugar because you've been fasting all night. It's to lower inflammation. It's to switch you into alert as opposed to groggy and like trying to figure it out in the morning. And then once it peaks out at about 30, 45 minutes, it gradually drops down through the rest of the day. And by nighttime, it should be quite low so that melatonin can come out. So I say cortisol is like your sun, melatonin is like your moon. Now the mismatch happens when people are low in cortisol in the morning and they're high at night. And we see this so much with parents and entrepreneurs who put their kids down to bed and then they're like, all right, fantastic. I have 1 or 2 hours to get stuff done. And they mad dash and they do emails and they're doing with mail and they're working their business and they're doing this and they're doing that, or they're catching up on their show, late into the night. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, it's 11 o'clock. I need to go to bed. But they've been so jazzed, excited, watching TV on screens, tablets, computers, that the brain is like, wait a minute, I'm not actually sure what we're doing here. So I haven't been making melatonin. I thought you wanted to stay up. That was your intent. And then these people go, I can't fall asleep. I can't stay asleep. I'm kind of a hot mess. And then what happens? You wake up in the morning groggy and you need lots of coffee and you just repeat it all over again.
Wow. I mean,
I know.
It's like you're here with me. No, I'm just kidding. It is definitely a juggle figuring out how to at least for me, it has been having a second child, getting back into work, having that ability to set boundaries and set my work schedule, pull back my hours, but like know exactly when those are and try to make them in the daytime as much as possible, because it's a slippery slope. You can go, just clean out that inbox real quick or whatever it may be. But what are the compounding effects of that? What would happen to someone if they have, if they're not having that cortisol awakening response in the morning and they really have elevated cortisol at night, and then they start mainlining caffeine? How does that affect your hormones long-term? And what are some side effects to that?
Not only hormones long-term, but it kind of affects everything long-term. So from the top down, we know it affects our brain and our brain function and our future brain function, which is not good. So learning and memory, retention, things like that. We know it affects our heart. We know that there are comorbidities associated when you have circadian rhythm dysfunction. So high blood pressure, right? It affects our mood. We're more prone to anxiety, maybe depression, stress. We're less resilient than we used to be as we continue to have sort of a dysfunctional circadian rhythm. We're more prone to infection. We're more prone to things like metabolic syndrome or blood sugar issues, diabetes, prediabetes, because cortisol plays a big role in how we create glucose in the body. It actually contributes to autoimmunity. In the morning, that cortisol awakening response helps one of our glands. There's a gland behind our chest bone, our breastbone, called the thymus gland, not thyroid, thymus, and it has a lot to do with our immune system. And so when our immune system is maturing, when we have cells that are maturing, immune system cells, the body's super smart and it runs them through the thymus gland to see if any of them are autoimmune in a sense. We call it central tolerance. Can you tolerate yourself basically as a cell? And if you can't, if you've been formed accidentally wrong and that you react against, let's just, to make it easy, the thyroid, then now if you went out in circulation, now you could increase your risk for autoimmune thyroid. And so the thymus gland goes, oh, I'm so sorry, immune cell. You failed. You are accidentally reactive against the thyroid. I'm going to pull you to the side and you have to die. So what triggers that death is the rise in cortisol in the morning, the cortisol awakening response. So part of the trigger, cortisol goes up and what's known as apoptosis occurs. Now, if you don't get that rise in the morning, what I envision in my head is that those little sneaky immune cells slip out because they're not getting killed like they should get killed. And so I have absolutely had men and women who said, gosh, my autoimmune symptoms have gotten worse. What is going on? And oh, by the way, I'm super tired in the morning. I'm like, ooh, let's check this cortisol awakening response. And sure enough, it will be low or it will go down. And so that's part of the picture around autoimmune. And so just by adjusting morning cortisol coupled with good sleep, it can be very helpful to those who work with autoimmune.
Absolutely.
So it's a lot.
It is a lot. And you know what? You bring up a really good point. I feel like in my practice, I have noticed there are times when people go through really stressful events or they're walking around chronically stressed out with chronically elevated cortisol. And then all of a sudden we see the diagnosis of an autoimmune disease.
Yep.
Can we talk about like chronically elevated cortisol?
Chronically elevated cortisol. So if you think about it, chronically elevated cortisol is to protect you. So cortisol is known as a glucocorticosteroid. Gluco, because glucose is its primary job. If cortisol had a resume, I handle glucose would be like its like main thing. And so, and the reason for that is to give you sugar, to give you glucose. So your brain is switched on and ready to go and your muscles have energy to run or fight because you're stressed out. And so your body, like your lizard brain, your reptilian brain doesn't understand the difference between there's a tiger in front of me or it's just a crappy day, right? It's just tons of emails and work stuff and the kids are a pain and that text message was terrible and the news is on. It doesn't know the difference. And as humans, we don't run and fight much anymore, but our reaction with blood sugar is still the same. So when you have elevated cortisol, what can happen is that you can sort of get this chronically low grade or high grade elevated glucose as well. It also affects our immune system. So cortisol is normally leans towards the anti-inflammatory, which is a good thing. But over a while, what happens is that the body's getting pelted with cortisol. And just like when your kids are trying to get your attention and they're annoying, you kind of tune them out, your cells can do the same thing to cortisol. So instead of all the receptors being on the cell, like, yes, cortisol, come bind to me. They're like, this is annoying, and they shrink back in. Right. It's 100% what it is. Right. It's 100% what it is. And so now you swing back into inflammatory because you don't have the cortisol can't bind to do its anti-inflammatory job. And it can be a real issue. And then thirdly, with hormones, females are born biologically to reproduce. Now, whether you want to or not, I don't care. I don't want to reproduce, but other women totally do. And my ovaries and my brain are like, well, just in case, Carrie, just in case you have to have a menstrual cycle every month, just in case. And so it's constantly surveying my land to see, am I safe enough and healthy enough to get pregnant? Even though consciously I know I don't want to, like my body doesn't know that. So if I have high cortisol all the time, if I'm chronically stressed, then the brain will go, oh, she doesn't feel safe, right? She doesn't feel healthy. And it often will shift a woman's menses. So she'll have a short cycle, a long cycle, a skip cycle, bad PMS, doesn't ovulate. And we're seeing this a lot right now through 2020. A lot of women were like, what is going on? Like last summer, I had a lot of friends that were like, I skipped June. Like, what happened to June? Like, I skipped July. What happened to July? I'm like, well, it's a
2020
safety,
happened.
Right? 2020 happened 100%. It's a safety thing. The brain went, you don't feel safe. Maybe now is not the time to get you pregnant. Now, of course, this doesn't happen to all women. It happens in various degrees, and how you, like your resiliency and your habits and how you take care of yourself and what have you. But it's a big thing for chronic stress. It can really, really, really negatively impact the body.
Absolutely. Are there any lifestyle choices that we're making that are causing chronic elevation of cortisol that downregulates our response?
Yeah. So I would say, for going back to the beginning, like not getting enough sleep is a big one. Our circadian rhythm, our up in the morning, down at night rhythm, is dictated by these things in our brain called the clock genes, like the clock on your wall. And so the clock genes are set and reset by light and dark. And I joke all the time. I'm like, I didn't say ashwagandha, right? I didn't say intermittent fasting. I didn't say the Peloton bike. What I said was light and dark. And so give the clock genes what they want. In the morning, on waking, get some full spectrum light, whether it's open your door and go outside, go out on your back patio for a couple of minutes, spend $20 or $30 and get a full spectrum light box and turn it on in the morning for 10 minutes. That light exposure can be so helpful. And a lot of people sleep in dark because I'm telling them to. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, you have to open up your blackout curtains, open up your window and get actual exposure. Don't look at the sun. Don't be stupid. Don't burn your retinas out. But just the act of being around brightness is what's helpful. And then at night, you want the complete opposite. At night, you want to either wear the blue light blocking glasses, start dimming your lights, be off of your screens an hour before bed, which is way easier said than done. Yeah. Change the background of your screen to a more orange hue, and then sleep with the blackout curtains, the blackout light curtains. Sleep with a sleep mask. Make sure that you don't have lots of lights, night lights, things, showing, blinking in your room, because that's what resets us back to our 24-hour clock. So at the base minimum, that's what I tell people to do. Light in the morning, first thing on waking, darkness at night.
I love that so much. I love a blackout room like more than anything in the world, to the fact that when I go to a hotel, I will take a little bit of electrical tape.
Yeah.
Because when you sleep in a blackout room and then you go to a hotel that has the little lights on the phone, the little lights on the clock, the little lights on the TV, the little lights on their their smoke detector. And I'm like, why is it Vegas in here right now?
Yes.
Not like the strip, not like the room, like the strip.
Yes.
When you are used to that pitch blackness, it is so annoying to have light. So, let's talk about your full spectrum light box. What are you using? What do you recommend?
So I don't have a particular light box. I literally got on Amazon, full disclosure. I got on Amazon, I read all the reviews, and I picked one that works for me. So mine is about the size of a sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11, and it has a kickstand. And so I just set it on my counter in the winter because I live in Portland, Oregon, which is rainy and gray like most of the year. And then it's tapped. So I just tap it on and leave it on while I'm feeding my dog and making tea and in the kitchen. And I can take it with me. Other people have maybe more upright boxes. They like more rectangulars. My girlfriend has one that clips on, or it's like a lamp. So it's over her desk computer. Mm-hmm. So she will turn it on when she sits down for work. And she likes that route because it's right there for like, kind of like I was like, it's kind of like a tanning thing. It's really fun, but it's full spectrum. Like she's not getting tan. Yeah. And so, so it kind of depends. So I don't even know the name of it, to be honest with you. I could look at the back of it, but
it's all good. We'll throw it in the show notes. And
so just make sure it's full spectrum. Make sure they can, back up their claims that it's full spectrum. Read the reviews. Make sure everybody in the reviews likes it, feels better with it, feels like it's bright, because there's obviously some junk on the market. But that's the great thing about reviews. People will tell you. So, and do that if you live in a dark climate. You may not need it in the summer, but as we get into winter, if you live in some of the northern states, it can be hard. Canada and
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, turn the lights back on. Mm-hmm. Well, let's take it back to hormones. Once again, I want to kind of touch on something that you talk about a lot, which is how our moods and hormone cycles are interconnected. Mm-hmm. Can you give me a rundown on which hormones are sort of the most prevalent in the different phases of our cycle and what we might experience during those times?
So in the first part of our cycle, it's called the follicular phase. During our period, our hormones are generally quite low. And then as we get closer, like if you have a 28-day cycle, as you get closer to maybe day 10-ish, your estrogen is going to start to rise. And we need it to rise because it helps stimulate ovulation. So we're estrogen dominant in the late follicular phase. Totally normal. It's expected. However, some women are so estrogen dominant, they feel it. They're like, gosh, I hate ovulation because I feel moody. I feel like mini PMS at this time. I'm having all these symptoms. Once you ovulate, then your estrogen goes up again, but not quite as high. And your progesterone should go up. So you're progesterone dominant in the second half of your cycle. Now, estrogen helps a lot with mood quite a bit when it's in balance. Like let's take serotonin. So too low of or too high of estrogen can lower our serotonin. So if you don't have enough estrogen, maybe you're menopausal, maybe you have amenorrhea, you've skipped some cycles, you've PCOS and you're not cycling, then what happens is you struggle to make serotonin being what we consider our antidepressant hormone. We need estrogen to bind to the estrogen receptor in our brain, and it helps make the enzyme that makes serotonin. Now, on the flip side, let's pretend you're PMSing, you're getting close to your period, you have lots of estrogen, then high estrogen will actually divert the resources needed to make serotonin down a different pathway. Because like, who needs serotonin when you're, like got all this chaos going on? It's an interesting design flaw to me. So you can't win either way. And so women will go, gosh, as I'm getting into menopause, so low estrogen, I feel more depressed. And women in PMS time are often like, I'm kind of angry and depressed. And so estrogen can play a role there. Progesterone is the opposite. Progesterone's our calming, soothing, relaxing, everything's going to be okay hormone, which is why when you don't have a lot of it, it's very also common to have for women to be anxious and not sleep as they get close to their cycle. And so, and as they get into perimenopause and menopause. So what progesterone does is when it breaks down, one of its metabolites binds to our GABA receptor in our brain. And GABA is our inhibitory. So it's calming, it's soothing, it's relaxing. We like GABA. And if progesterone's not there to do that, then poor little GABA has to rely just on GABA, which is not as much as when you have progesterone. And so women were like, oh my gosh, at my cycle, I'm either angry and depressed or anxious and can't sleep. Like it can't, it's so not fair. Yeah. When they're struggling with hormones. And so that's why it's women, when I explain this to them, they're like, oh my gosh, I thought I was crazy. I thought it was me. I thought I was broken. I thought this was normal. I thought this was something I had to live with. I'm like, it's your hormones are not Goldilocks. They're not like just right. They're too high or too low. And so your brain is responding out of retaliation.
Absolutely. That's why I love being pregnant.
Because everything's high when you're pregnant. Estrogen, progesterone.
Give me that progesterone. I'll take it. And I have, give me, it's just, I love that. I get a kid out of it. That's pretty cool too. But
yeah, there's that.
Not for everybody. So let's touch a little bit more on menopause because, it feels like not doomsday, but you're talking about, getting rid of all of these amazing hormones that, when we have our period for the first time and it's overwhelming to be like, oh, now I have to deal with a period and what do I do? And is it regular? And when it starts to like really sync up and you've got it, you're kind of like annoyed by it.
Yeah.
When you have it, but you get used to it. And then all of a sudden all that stuff goes away and a lot of people feel like junk. And you talked about one patient that did is there a way to make menopause easier? Is there a way? Okay.
Yeah. So I
give us some light at the end of the tunnel.
I call perimenopause and menopause reverse puberty because if you remember all the chaos of going into puberty, now you have to back yourself out of it. So instead of getting your period, yay, now like your period is going away. And I do say this a lot because I think it's true. I would like to be the goddess of the female body. I don't want to be goddess of the world. That seems like a big job, but like the female body, I have some change upgrades, right? There's a few things that I've gotten feedback on over the years where women are like, can you make this happen? Sure.
Yeah.
One of them is perimenopause and menopause because you would think we are biologically designed to carry babies. We bleed every month. We deal with hormone cycles every month. Some women unfortunately get way worse with like PMDD or endometriosis, adenomyosis. They, really get sort of the short end of the stick. And then as we get older into our 40s and 50s, you would think that biology would be so proud of us that they would be like, hey, thank you for your service. We appreciate the fact that you spent years, cycling and being reproductive. So here is, perfect skin and perfect hair and perfect energy and like svelte body and tons of, you sleep great and your mood's great and your libido's high. And instead we get perimenopause and menopause, which is like, congratulations, you're going to have hot flashes and night sweats and vaginal dryness. Like, yay.
We're going to hang you up to dry.
Right. Pretty much joint pain, like good luck. And what I want for women is that we glide into menopause as opposed to slam into menopause. And so the only way to glide is to literally start in our 30s, if you can, by taking care of yourself. I find the women who do the best in perimenopause and menopause have realize that they cannot burn the candle at both ends. They have to put their health as a priority as best they can. They have to sleep. They have to pay attention to diet and stress and nutrients and all of this stuff as a foundation as they get into perimenopause and menopause. My stressed out patients often had the worst perimenopause and menopause. Absolutely. My stressed out, didn't take care of themselves, put themselves last on the list, always put their family, their work first. Had an exercise routine, but not really. They were kind of like, didn't really eat for their health, didn't really supplement if they were missing nutrients, things like that. And so they thought they could continue to burn the candle at both ends as they entered into menopause. And the body was like, ooh, except I'm literally taking away a lot of your ovarian function. So good luck.
Yeah.
Right. You can't get away with what you used to get away with. And I have a lot of women that would tell me that. They're like, Carrie, I hit menopause. I didn't change my exercise routine. I didn't change my diet. I didn't change anything. And I'm 15 pounds heavier and feel terrible and can't sleep and I'm like, well, guess what? It's time to change. It's time to change your exercise routine and it's time to change your sleep habits and it's time to change your wine habit and it's time to change your stress response. And I'm not saying perfect world. Nobody's perfect. Nobody can be in a perfect world. It's to the best of your ability, but you have to change. Otherwise it's going to suck.
What are we doing with the workouts? What are we doing with sleep? What are we doing with food, supplementation?
Yep. We are switching our workouts from a cardio bunny based workout to more of a lift weights. It's hard to put on muscle as we get older and it's harder when we get into menopause and we need that muscle. And so the body will give us excess adipose tissue because you can make hormone, you can make estrogen out of fat tissue, believe it or not. And so we need to switch to a more weight based workout and we need to rest. We need to rest. So instead of doing your Peloton bike for an hour and then doing the 30-minute hit and then a 20-minute core workout 4 days a week, no. And you think I'm joking. These are the DMs that I get of women that are like, do you think this is too much? I'm like, yeah, you just told me your symptoms were a hot mess. Yes, that's too much. You're over exercising. And if you are not exercising at all, you've not exercised your whole life, or you've done it very, very sporadically, now is the time to build some strength. Now is the time to build some resiliency and to get yourself into a little better shape. And so start exercising, start somewhere, but definitely include weights as part of it. So that's what I say as women hit menopause. And then diet, I'm like, all right, I think because we're losing hormone, we're losing estrogen and progesterone, we are more sensitive to sugar and carbs. It just is what it is. I'm not vilifying sugar and carbs. I'm not saying never eat sugar and carbs. I 100% have dark chocolate every day. But I know as I get older that I'm in my 40s. I'll be 44 next month. I know because I watch my sugar. I have a glucose monitor in my arm.
Me too, girl.
Right?
Levels. And I see your aura ring.
Yeah, I have an aura ring. Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
I know. I have all I have all my levels boxes here. I'm ready. So I can see myself, depending if I ovulated or not that cycle, I'm not as great when it comes to sugar and carbs. And that also includes alcohol. So I will get a lot of pushback from women who go, but I drink biodynamic, organic, low sugar wine. And I'm like, great, 100% is what you should drink if you're going to drink. Still alcohol. And it's still affecting your detox pathways. And it's still, not the greatest for you. So just be very mindful. And if you're not doing those, if you're like, well, I have a rum and Coke every night. If I'm drinking margaritas on the regular, I'm, drinking just normal, regular Riesling wine, like that's a lot of sugar. Yeah. So be very careful. So when it comes to food, I'm like, be mindful as we lose our hormones to menopause, we are less able to handle sugar and carbs. So you may need to up your protein, up your weight training, be careful of your alcohol, and then stress management. We can't get rid of the stress. We can't. I mean, obviously get rid of what you can, but it's how you respond. So just taking 5 minutes a day to do breathing exercises, taking 10 minutes a day to do a guided meditation. There's great apps out there now. Thankfully, it's at your fingertips. Journaling, doing 10 minutes of yoga, like whatever you do to bring it down a level, I encourage throughout the day. And it doesn't have to be, people push back and go, I don't have an hour to meditate. I'm like, me either. I do 10 minutes tops. That's what I do. And then I will do breathing exercises when I feel stressed out. And we also have this really cool nerve called the vagus nerve. Different than the vagus you mentioned earlier, not the strip, but VAGUS, vagus. And what the vagus nerve does is that it is our main inhibitory nerve. It's like our calming nerve. It helps with our rest and digest aspect of us. And to activate the vagus nerve, we can do fun things like sing. And we can do fun things like gargle water and hum your favorite song. And so I find myself in the shower gargling water a couple times, gargle for 30 seconds, spit out the water. When I've got music bumping in the morning, when I'm getting ready, I'm singing and humming along because one, I like to, and two, I know it's helping my vagus nerve. So it doesn't have to take a lot of time, and it just helps push us back into that rest and digest feeling, which can be helpful as we feel super stressed out heading into menopause.
I love it. I love that really fun recommendation for people. I think they should just get a rebounder, a little mini trampoline, do your 2 songs, belt it out in the morning, get in the shower, gargle it up. These are the types of tips that become automatic because you stack them in your day with the things you're already doing.
Yeah.
And they make just such a massive impact.
Yeah. And they're free, cheap, and easy. That's what I love. I know sometimes people look at me being a naturopathic doctor in functional medicine and they're like, oh, that's way out of my budget. I'm like, no. Gargling is free, right? Humming is free. Getting light in the morning, if you have sunshine in the morning, is free. Sleeping in darkness is free. You can cover up the lights unless you buy like a $5, $10 cute little eye mask.
Yeah.
But so there's the cheap part. Like there's a lot we can do that can make it free, cheap, and easy and have huge impacts.
I love that so much. And I know that the Dutch test is not free.
Not for cheap and easy.
Yeah. But I will say,
but insightful.
It's so insightful and actionable. I think that's where, when you're just getting one snapshot from a Quest test, or at the wrong time, and you're trying to make knee-jerk responses with medications or something like that. Like, let's get a real picture into your health and do some things to make it better.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are marching at the front of our little parade and and helping every woman out there really get that picture and make those actionable changes and feel better in their body, no matter where they are. And I appreciate the soft landing into menopause. I love the insight that you give people. I love that your recommendations are free, cheap, and easy most of the time. It's real world, it's real life. And I appreciate you, Carrie. Thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. This is definitely my biggest passion, to empower women so that they can take control of their health and feel better. Because a lot of women don't feel good. And especially through 2020, they really don't feel good with being at home and at home schooling and a lot of fear. And it's important that they can take control with some of these free, cheap, and easy things to understand what's going on with their body and then do something about it.
Yeah, definitely. I want to say, are there any times in life where someone wouldn't be a candidate for a Dutch test?
We don't recommend it in pregnancy because your hormones are just constantly going up, up, up. So by the time you collect, like the next day they're higher, your hormones are higher. So it's not worth it. Breastfeeding is not contraindicated. It just, you have to know when you do a Dutch test that breastfeeding affects your hormones. And so if you are a new breastfeeding woman who hasn't gotten her cycle back and you Dutch test, know that your hormones are going to look different in a month or 2 months or 6 months just because of the act of breastfeeding. But if you're breastfeeding, if you're like a year out, maybe 2 years of breastfeeding, and you're like, oh, my cycles are back, I only breastfeed at night to, for bonding or whatever, sleep, then I'm like, oh yeah, go ahead. Like you're like 95% back to normal, and just the occasional breastfeed is probably fine. And then on the birth control pill, I will say, for those women on the birth control pill acts by shutting down the ability of your ovaries to make testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. So those levels will often be real low on the test. But we do have women on the birth control pill who still want to know the rest of their androgens like DHEA, and they want to know their cortisol, and they want to know their melatonin and some other markers. So it's, again, not contraindicated. Just realize what the birth control pill does. It takes over for your own hormone.
We'll have to have another podcast.
We will. I know.
I love that. Really, really good information. We will link to the Dutch test, to your website, to your Instagram, and everything in the show notes. But if people are in their car listening now, where can they follow along?
Oh, Instagram, 100%. That's where I like to hang out. So I'm at dr.carriejones, at dr.carriejones. I
love it. Thanks, Dr. Jones. You're the best.
I appreciate you.
Have a great rest of your day.
You
we'll
too.
Be in touch.
Thank you for listening to Be Well by Kelly. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Learn more at bewellbykelly.com and follow me on Instagram at bewellbykelly. I would love if you picked up my books, Body Love and Body Love Every Day. They're sold on Amazon and at all major booksellers.